Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sedro Woolley Rotary Club, the greatest club in the. Today we have an invocation from Eric.
When there is turmoil swirling around us, let us be the calm. When the world is dark and full of fear, let us bring the light of dawn. When voices shout and conflict reigns, let us be the relief. When hope is needed everywhere, let us raise a voice for peace.
Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And our rock star Josh has the song again.
All right, I know what you guys are thinking, but I've been the song leader for 3 weeks now and we haven't sung it yet. So the baseball guy is going to suggest we sing. And how about those Mariners, by the way? So let's do this for the Mariners. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the ball game.
Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I ever get back over to root the Mariners if they don't win. It's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out of the old ball game. All right, nice job. Do we have any visiting Rotarians today? How about guests of,
Sorry, you were on the guests, right?
now we're on guests.
Yes. Today we have with us Todd Wright. Todd is from Sedro Woolley. A lot of people in this club probably already know him. So he might be coming to a few more meetings here in the future. So welcome, Todd.
Welcome, Todd. All right, any other guests? We'll just move right along. So today is the Reading and Resources event at Cascade Middle School. So I know Julia and Eric and Sheena and Lynn and myself are going to be there handing out tickets for books to the kids. I know that there's some other people. Danny will be there. I don't know if anyone else is going to be there, but if you're there, let me know. I'll mark you down for an attendance makeup. It should be a really great event. I know Ruth has been working her tail off to pull this together. So hopefully we'll see you guys there. And then just a reminder that there's no noon meeting next week. We will be at Barley and Brew from 5 to 7. The first beverage is on me. So if only like 10 of you could come, I can afford that. Yes, bring spouses. You can also bring your dogs as long as they're well behaved and on leashes. So leave your unruly spouses and dogs at home. Okay, and then next up, I don't have any other announcements, but I'm gonna give the mic to Mike.
Just real quick though, Christina Trader did mention that she'll be there this evening too.
All right. Yep.
Okay, so you guys know that I've been working hard out at ball fields to get bathrooms out there. We finally came with a set of plans. We were shocked, but I guess if anyone's gone to the grocery store or tried to buy a car or whatever, things are substantially more expensive today than they were 3 years ago. So the price came in. I'm going to shock you all. It's at $470,000 for bathrooms. And John looked at it and he said, well, that's ridiculous. So he looked at it. I gave him the plans. John went through the whole set of plans. He had Fisher and Sons look at them and he said, well, Mike, you're the only person that can fix these plans. And I says, what do you mean? He says, well, between you and your customers and whatever, you got to cut $130,000 out of this bid. So that gets to 360. Well, so then I worked with the school district, and Mary and I might be completely offline, but they feel that they can come up with 100,000 this year and 100,000 next year. And so that leaves like $150,000 on a 2-year project. We have 50,000 allocated this year from Rotary. My plan is to start the project, do about $150,000 worth of work this fall, fundraise, and hopefully with Rotary auction, we can try to raise a substantial amount of money. I've had calls into Ruth, but I haven't got a hold of her. So I guess I'm bringing this back because it's possible to do this project. We're going to do it over 2 years. My question is it something that Rotary still wants to be that committed to? I have a set of plans. I don't have them with me. John told me, he said, this is not a set of bathrooms. This is a pavilion that we're building. And one of the reasons that it got bigger is because Lisa wanted a place where people could stand out of the rain waiting for their rides. So there's 8 feet of covered concrete all the way around this. It's lit. The bathrooms are hooked to the security and the internet so that they can be opened and closed via some cell phones. Stephanie has one. I think just about anyone who works for the school district can get that cell phone thing too. So it's on timers. It's connected. We had to hit some really high R values because of the state of Washington. So it's got 6 inches of hard foam between steel in the roofs, and it just got expensive. So my question is, I got a team that's willing to put this thing together. We're going to go out, and between our family and our different organizations, we plan on fundraising the $130,000 to get this down below 350, and then do it in 2 phases. But what we're really asking for is does Rotary have the commitment for the 150,000 over 2 years? So I don't know if we do a vote. I don't know how that works. Does anyone have an opinion? Louis?
You said, I would recommend, and it's what we did when we did Hammer Heritage. When I was president, that was my project. And it turned out it was going to be a 2-year project. So I made sure that Pete Rusi was okay with it. So I don't know if you've talked to Ruth.
I've left messages, but I haven't got back with, she hasn't got back with her.
That's one thing you probably should do.
Okay.
And then we brought it to the membership and we voted on it and it was okay.
Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I need to get a hold of Ruth and talk to her to get her buy-in that this is going to be a project over 2 years. And then I also just need, basically if there's extra money that we have for this year, if things don't get spent, maybe we can use part of that money to go forward, Steve. And I don't know if there's any left, or there's going to be, or, Peter to pay Paul kind of thing going on. So that's where I'm at with this. I will get with Ruth in the next day or so. And then, but if you want to do it privately or whatever, if you feel that this is something that we're out of line spending. You really need to get to Christine and have your opinion, even if it's anonymous. So, because I don't want to cause a big conflict, but man, there's a lot of people that want these bathrooms done, and it's just way too much for the school district to do the bill. But you know, there's only 3 or 4 bathrooms out there, and they're 30 years old. And part of the deal is that we got to get rid of those when we finish this, because those bathrooms are just, they were worn out when we put them there. And we put them there in 1998, and they're still there. And, you know, the school district's done everything they can possible, but they're literally going to fall apart. So we need to have this done. And go ahead, Louis. Well, go ahead.
When you look at the project at Hammer Heritage and everything downtown, and think of how many people that Janicki Fields would serve, you know, with all the summer activities. And I take grandkids there and love it. And there's both local and out of town participation. I think it'll be a tremendously useful, needed project, and we ought to go for it however we need to finance it.
I want to say the same thing, and I think I would add to it that the location of this project, Patrick's Playground, is a pinnacle for a community. There are tens of thousands of cars that go by that every day that see the work the Rotary does. They see that jewel of our community, and I can't think of a better project.
I also think that it's a great opportunity to have some local city, you know, fundraising events. Because I mean, who takes their kids to Janicki Field and doesn't complain about the bathroom situation?
Well, and is there an opportunity for like a community block grant with the city, Rotary, the county, the school district working together to find some of that? I know those are due like in January. So if there's an opportunity to find something, other streams of funding, I could help with that.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, I think that that's a really good idea. I mean, the reality is what I told everybody was these bathrooms are not going to be paid for through kids selling candy bars. I mean, they can buy their uniforms, they can do whatever, but this community has to figure out, you know, how to get these paid for. I think Rotary has always stepped up. I need to get with Ruth and then bring this back and let's vote on it, because I don't think it's not fair to vote on this without Ruth saying that it's something she's committed to. So that's where we're at. There's going to be some 3D drawings of it. But basically it's like 40 by 50, the roof, and the building is 8 feet inside that all the way around. It's got handicap accessible bathrooms. There's, I mean, I can go through the details. There's 4 bathrooms on the women's side, 2 on the men's side, and urinals. That's the size of it, with sinks. There's a concession area that's just open. And then on the far end, it's going to have ticket booths so that they can have a place to sell tickets for when they're doing tournaments. And then there's 8 feet all the way around it, lit, where people can stand to get picked up. Or if it's raining or something, it's just going to be, and it's first class. We didn't cut any corners, and I don't want to cut any corners. So that's where we're at. And we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay, Mike called me last week and asked and talked to me on the phone about it. And it's such a big project that I didn't want to say yes or no without making sure that the club had heard about it first, because it was a project that we had approved. But when we approved it, I think 2 or 3 years ago, or just right after the playground, it was just bathrooms, and now it's a bigger project. So I wanted to make sure that we had the support of the club before we said yes or no. So thank you for sharing that with us, Mike. Danny, do we have a raffle?
All right, first number is 19. 19. Shelly Shat, 25. We'll get you a gift certificate there. Okay, we've got B9. Is that you, Danny? Oh, yep. All right. And is that the Snoop one? Is that the Snoop Doggy Dog one? That's not all right. Last number, 50. 50.
All right. Hey, hey, hey. I need all eyes on me, Josh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. I want everybody to look down. If you're not wearing your name tag, you owe us $1. I'm getting back to old Rotary. When I joined, we used to get fined for this, right? And I had my tag in my bathroom for like 2.5 years. And I got lucky that you guys forgot about that little one, right? I didn't go through the list to see who forgot to sign in. So that's your warning. Next week, we start looking at the list. So really what I want to do here today is, Mariner fans, raise your hand. Mariner fans. Okay, Mariner fans, we're going to pay $1. If you're a fan of any other team in the Major League Baseball, or you're not a fan of baseball, you have to put $3 in, and then we're done. Honor system. Honor system, all right? We're making money for those bathrooms. How about those Mariners, you guys? So who has happy dollars? Because I'm the program today and I want to get to it because it's so exciting. So let's get through these happies.
I'll Venmo some money in. My sister was evacuated along with a lot of West Kelowna, and she was actually able to go back to her apartment. It's still standing. There's a lot of smoke damage, so she can't actually live there yet, and there's not potable water. But yeah, she has more than just her cat left, so that's good.
And she has her cat left. So happy. Who's happy? Oh, Julie's always happy.
It's a problem. Yeah, so I don't know how many of you saw me out here in the park, but guess what? Our park is like 99.9% there. So, Madam President, with your permission, if we could maybe do a quick ribbon cutting, say the 21st of September, something like that. Can we do that? Just make it real quick. And I want to acknowledge the Public Works team because they made this happen. Nathan and Mark Freiberger, I mean, you want to talk about the cost of things. When we first started doing this, when we got the grant, we thought that we had it all covered. And then inflation hit and it almost doubled. So we were really scrambling these last couple of years to really figure out how we were going to complete this. It's done. It's really cool. The water park is super cool. In fact, I almost got wet. I was standing out there when they turned it on. So I know it works and it's just really nice. And if I may make one more suggestion. So we actually had them sandblast the memorial to our vets out there. It's actually to oh my gosh, the Spanish American War. They were the ones, the mothers are actually the one who put that together. It's absolutely beautiful. So if you don't mind when you're walking out there to take a look at that, it's really gorgeous. So anyway, that's why I'm happy.
She's happy. Anybody happier? Who's happier than Julia? Oh yeah, she's like, I'm not that happy. You don't have to be monetarily that happy. Yeah. But you can be.
I am taking the first vacation I've had in pre-COVID, so 10 years. We are taking our fifth wheel to Minnesota. Don't ask me why we're going to Minnesota, but I get to see my son and we get to like disconnect off our phones and the building won't burn down and my staff is ready for me to be gone. I love it. Thank you.
Travis is happy. Who? Travis?
I got a happy $5, a couple trips. One, our Rotary auction crab trip. This year, the Rothenbuehlers purchased it and we went out on Monday. And it was a beautiful day and great company. And we caught a bunch of crab and had a shore lunch on what turns out to be a forbidden beach. Crescent Harbor, you guys familiar with that? But anyway, there's a big sign that says there's unexploded ordnance and stay off. And so we didn't explode and it all was good. And then last night I went out fishing on the river. Louis was standing on a sandbar there and we were fishing just by Louis. Louis was catching fish. We caught a bunch of fish and had a good time.
Awesome. Tiny table here. Who's happy? Somebody, one of you two has got to be happy. God, so disappointed.
Sandra, shall you ask the people online if any of them are
Oh
happy
my
or not?
gosh, you guys have to be happy. I'm looking at you like you're looking at me. Where's the camera? You. Nobody's happy. So the next, I forgot about this little rule that we used to do. If you were an early leaver, you used to pay for that, right? Thank you for those of you who've been in Rotary a while. So keep that in mind, guys. Next time, a couple of people came to me and said, I'm an early leaver. I apologize, and I appreciate that. And I just want to make sure that we're doing that as well going forward, apologizing for leaving early and paying for it, paying for the privilege. That's it. We raised money. We're good. Who's ready to learn about dementia? Do I just take the mic? No. There's a mic up there. Does this thing move? I gotta see it. Oh. Well, welcome you guys. It's really nice to be here. My name is Sandra Jensen. And for those of you who don't know, I am the director at Country Meadow Village, which is a retirement community in Sedro Woolley. And I'm not an expert on dementia. And so I don't want you to walk away from this feeling like I'm telling you facts and science or anything like that. But what I am
is an expert on having parents that have dementia and an expert on being compassionate and dealing with lots of different people who have lots of different kinds of dementia. And so I think of dementia training and classes a lot like I think of CPR. In my line of work, our employees, have to have dementia training. It makes sense. We also have to have CPR because it also makes sense. But I really think both of those are important for everybody to have, because in our personal lives, our spouse could have a heart attack, or I personally know one of my caregivers gave CPR at Costco once. So we all, if we look around the table, I've seen a lot of you at Country Meadow Village. Some of you have moved people into Country Meadow Village. Some of you have moved people into other communities, and we all know people that have dementia, and I think we can all learn, myself included, daily on better ways to communicate with them or just even understand them. So this is the training that we do for our employees. And so please forgive the proprietary village concept stuff. My intent here isn't to sell you on Country Meadow Village. So think of this as you're just learning about dementia the way we teach our employees, not that I'm trying to sell you, because I would never do that. So what is dementia? I hope that's a blank screen on yours. So there's lots of different kinds of dementia. So we want you guys, that's tiny. On my screen, it was much bigger. The big one that we all know about is Alzheimer's. And then we have things like Lewy body dementia. We have vascular dementia, frontotemporal lobal dementia, which I think that's the Bruce Willis one that we know about lately. There's lots of different kinds. So the basic thing about dementia, it's not a single disease. It just really represents memory loss, right? It represents loss of cognition, loss of memory, those kind of things. A decline in thinking, that kind of stuff. The most powerful thing that we do when we train people on dementia in our line of work is show them the healthy brain compared to a brain of somebody that has Alzheimer's or another kind of dementia. You can kind of see in the big picture here, the big blue brain would be normal, the brain next to it, not normal. Is this it? Ooh, look at that. Healthy brain, and then mild Alzheimer's, and then severe. Do you see like the significant difference in brain matter just in that picture? Okay. This is just there's going to be lots of little brain scans here, and I'm not going to bore you with the science of what is Lewy body dementia versus the different kinds. But in every single one of these, what you're going to see is the affected brain tissue is considerably smaller in size and shape than the normal healthy brain is. And so one of the powerful things that we learn in our training is when you're young and you're healthy and you have muscles, right? And they're big, you've got big, strong muscles. And as you get older, those muscles atrophy, and it's visible. You see the atrophy, you see your muscles are smaller. When your brain shrinks, your head stays the same size, right? So we could have somebody that we love, they look the exact same that they used to look, but their brain could literally be half the size that it used to be. So visually, we can't see a difference in that person. And so I think we tend to judge the appearance of people more so than we judge what actually the affliction is going on. So when we see somebody with a physical disability, we're gonna give them a pass or some compassion for that. But we see some normal guy that's walking, in our hallways or whatever, and he looks completely normal, he can walk, but he has dementia, his brain is half the size that it used to be. It's really hard for us to kind of adjust our thinking of what our expectations for that person should be. This is just, again, more and more kinds of dementia, the brain, normal versus not normal. And it's really significant. I think this is the most powerful thing we teach. There's also alcoholic brain changes. And then we talk about the stages of dementia. So the very first stage there is somebody, they can pass as not having dementia. They just have some little things that they might be noticing, but nobody else would necessarily notice. And in my line of work, I kind of deal with stages 1 through 5, and forgive the typo. I actually had my boss put this together for me last minute. And he typoed. But 1 through 5, where people, they can either still pass as normal, or they might need help with a few of their activities of daily living, but they don't really need help eating. They don't need help with all of the stuff that's, oh shit, sorry. I'm a swearer, by the way, I apologize. This is really, for me, out of the realm of what I do. This is more memory care. So I'm not used to this stages 6 and 7, but kind of up stages 1 through 5. Those could be people at Country Meadow Village or the like, or those could be people that are still living at home with family. To be quite honest, we've moved people into where I work that as soon as they got in, I thought, oh my gosh, how did they live yesterday by themselves, right? Because I don't even know how they could have eaten, or they just didn't have the faculties to be taking care of themselves. So human beings are just really super resilient when it comes to surviving, regardless of whether or not they know what they're doing anymore. So there's lots of different things that can be thought of as dementia. You might think somebody might have dementia because of something that just pops up in their life. Delirium, people that have dementia can have delirium, but it also can be caused by a medical reason. So one of the other things that's fairly normal with dementia is it's typically a longer onset. You see it progressing. It starts with memory loss, forgetfulness, and it gradually gets worse. If somebody in your life one day is functioning completely normally, and the next day they're seeing small children in their bedroom, there's probably a medical reason for that, and not necessarily the progression of their dementia. And then oftentimes depression can manifest itself with as dementia, because people that are depressed, it just does. So you want to rule out kind of these medical reasons before you just say, oh, this person has dementia. Let's just change what our baseline thoughts are about them. Mild cognitive impairment is kind of that space between what's normal for an 85-year-old as far as memory loss and a full-blown diagnosis of dementia. One of the things we do when people move into our community is we do a small memory test for them. And I want to take a minute. Does anybody have a stopwatch? So Christine's going to start a stopwatch for us. And what I'd like you to do is, just in your own head, don't do it out loud, but I want you to see how many animals you can name in 1 minute. You just count them off in your head. How many animals can you name in 1 minute? And Christine, hit go. How much time is left, Christine? You got 25 seconds. Keep going, guys. Seems like forever, doesn't it? This isn't going to be a comparison. We aren't going to tell how many animals we got. Okay, we're done. All right, so for our residents that are moving in, if they get 13 animals or more, that's considered normal for somebody who's 85 years old or older, okay? So everybody around the room is going, yeah, I got more than 13, right? But you probably got a lot more than 13, right? So my point in doing the exercise is, if I can get 40 animals, and I'm just spitballing there, I didn't actually do it, but if I can get 40 animals, but normal for somebody that's 85 is 13, that's normal cognitive decline, right? Our brains, as they get older, do decline. Everybody does the whole, oh my God, I'm getting old, I can't remember. I get up and I go wherever and I can't remember what I was doing. That's normal. So when we're talking about forgetfulness and dementia, we're talking about significantly more decline than that. So I have residents that live where I work that get 0 animals, like cannot think of cat or dog, which are, you know, those are the first 2 animals you thought of, right? When you did your animals, cat, dog, right? They can't come up with cat or dog. So if you can imagine, and if it wasn't cat and dog, then I've got a room for you at Country Meadow Village. And that's not true because I don't have a room for you. We're full. But my point is, there's a big spectrum of what people's cognitive abilities are. And I just wanted to do that with you. And then I don't know if you guys know the difference between like where I work, which is assisted living, and then memory care. Memory cares are locked facilities that residents can't wander out of. They tend to have more activities geared towards definite dementia. You have to have a diagnosis of dementia to live there. Assisted living, we can have people that are cognitively intact, but they might need help with other activities of daily living because they're physically disabled. The reason why somebody might need to go to a memory care versus assisted living or independent living is because they're an elopement risk. Elopement means they leave unattended, don't know where they're going. For you and I, it's when we go get married. But for them, it's when they've wandered off the premises and we don't know where they are and they don't know where they are. And that can be a safety risk, right? That's definitely a safety risk. When they have poor judgment and are maybe trying to make biscuits out of detergent. When they have behaviors, and I'll talk a little bit about some behaviors in a minute, or they're just getting lost, or they are socially anxious and not able to engage with other people at the level that the other people are at. And so we all think, and I know we do, we all think of memory care as being awful. We think, why? I would never want my loved one to have to go to a memory care. But I've had so many residents that have moved on to memory care who have thrived, who were really struggling where they were at living at Country Meadow Village, because people like to be amongst their peers. They feel comfortable amongst people that are their peers. And so if I'm in a room full of all of you guys, and you guys are so much smarter than I am, I'm going to feel lesser because of that, right? I'm in the room with Keith Wagner. I'm a lesser being in that room, right? And that makes me feel uncomfortable. But you put me in a room with Christine, right? And we're like, we're on the same level, right? We're like right on each other. And so I thrive in that room, whereas I might not thrive with Keith because it's not because of anything Keith does. It's just because I feel like Keith is so much smarter than I am, right? And that's what happens to human beings in our environment. And I'm just making that shit up, right? No, but that's what happens. We assess people's anxiety and we're like, we think they would do better at that next level of care. And honestly, they really, truly do. And again, one of the things I like to talk about with my staff, and I got to do it over here because I didn't make a PowerPoint. Human beings are a bell curve in their, Lord, I've lost the word, development. Okay, so we start here, we're born, right? And then we kind of start going up in our little toddler years. Our brains are just learning like crazy, and we're learning language, and we're learning mobility, and we're learning all of these things. And we're little sponges. And when we misbehave in the grocery store, our parents, the good parents, they say there are consequences to that misbehavior and we have to go home now. You don't get to have this and you don't get to do that, right? And so we learn over time as we're going up the bell curve, when I behave, I get things, and when I misbehave, I don't get those things. And our behavior changes and we become, we live in society well because we learn the norms and we learn how to behave. And then we kind of reach the peak of our bell curve, and then we start our decline. And it happens to everybody at a different place. But now as we come down, this is a bell curve. It's identical, right? So we get to this place, we're starting to lose our communication. We're losing our ability to communicate with each other. We're losing our ability to do things, and it's super frustrating. And that same place when we're a toddler and we're pitching our fit, because we're learning communication and we don't quite know how to say something. It happens here because I hurt, I'm sick, but I don't know how to tell you that anymore. My words don't come out right. And so I'm having that same level of frustration at the same place in the bell curve, but I'm no longer able to learn here because my brain is dying, whereas here my brain was growing. So you can teach the toddler. You can't teach the older person. They're not capable of learning anymore. And that might sound harsh, but as soon as we realize that and we stop correcting and start more distracting or doing different techniques, then I think everybody in the room is happier because I'm not fighting a futile cause of trying to teach my parents that that's not appropriate anymore when they're not capable of learning that that's not appropriate anymore. Great example, because I'm going to overshare. My parents live at Country Meadow Village. My dad peed in the courtyard yesterday. Kid you not. I did tell him he can't do that anymore, but now I'm just keeping an eye on the man. And, you know, I'm not telling you that to embarrass my father. I'm telling you that as a lesson in the way dementia works is you revert back, you know, as your brain declines, the parts of your memories that are still there are those things that were from a long time ago. And I would bet most of the men in this room have peed in their backyard before, either as a child or my husband as a full-fledged adult last week. And then the dog went and peed on top of it, and I was not happy. So yeah, my husband and my dog are marking the backyard. But my point is, he had to pee, and there was a bush. And at some point in his life, he'd peed on a bush before, and so he peed on the bush. And I, as the director of Country Meadow Village, had to have the, Dad, you can't pee on a bush in the courtyard. Mortifying and yet funny at the same time. So anyway, so that's just a long way of saying my dad's here on the bell curve, and I love him to death. And he was the smartest man I've ever known. But at this point in his life, his brain's not there anymore. And I've accepted my dad where he's at. Yes.
So you're saying that when you corrected him, that will make a difference. He will do it again.
So then he went back outside in the courtyard 2 hours later, and I jokingly said from the front desk across the thing, "Don't be in the courtyard, Dad." And he laughed. So I think he won't pee in the courtyard again, but I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket. And we've got kind of eyes on him. And yeah. So it's an excellent point, and I'm glad you don't live at Country Meadow Village yet. But when it comes to people with dementia, we talk about our approach to these behaviors because, you know, that's a fairly mild behavior. But some people might look at that and go, oh, what a pervert. He just peed on a bush in public, right? Now, he's my dad. I have to say, he's not a pervert. He's my dad. But anybody could have done that. And they're not, you know, they're not lewd. Their intent wasn't to make you feel uncomfortable. Their intent was to relieve a symptom in their body, which was, I have to pee. And if we can think of that with people that, you know, we don't know it. We don't know who has dementia. Because again, I already said, I can look at you, your head looks the same as it did 20 years ago. But sometimes people's behaviors, you might start to think about things and go, oh, maybe it's not this person's fault, right? We never look at somebody and say, well, they had a heart attack, you know, and they don't do the physical things they used to do. I can't believe them, you know, what jerks. We don't do that, do we? So we can't really say somebody whose brain is atrophied, you know, and they're doing some things that they shouldn't be doing because their brain doesn't know. That they're jerks, or we don't want to attribute them to jerkishness when really this might be out of their control. Anyways, again, how do we care for these people? You know, if you're caring for somebody in your own home, things you might want to think about is things that you don't want your children, you know, the way we teach it. If you wouldn't want your children to get into it unattended, then you wouldn't want your adult person that has dementia to have access to it either. The same poison control rules apply to elder adults as they do to children. If you're worried about them wandering off, that's a great time. We've got technology now that's fantastic. Little GPS trackers, you can just put a little air tag on them, follow them everywhere. And then dignity and rights. The other side, when we talk about our bell curve of human development, this 2-year-old, we really don't think of as having rights, right? I'm the parent, I take care of them, all of that. They don't really have these rights to make their own decisions. They don't get to choose when they cross the street. We're going to make that decision for them. Adults on the other side of that spectrum still have all the rights of the adult that had the fully intact brain. So we have to let them make their own decisions, and even if they're bad and or whatever. So we do want to make sure that all of our staff and everybody here understands that just because somebody has a power of attorney or any of that doesn't mean they don't have the rights to still make their own decisions. Am I running out of time? Christine? Person-centered care, my boss included this because he loves this kind of stuff. But I love this little quote, and I feel like it was in a different place on the other screen. It is more important to know what person the disease has than the disease the person has. So we shouldn't identify people by their disease. I think we do that a lot. Oh, she has cancer. Now she's cancer, as opposed to that's Christine. So I'm not saying Christine has cancer. She didn't tell me something that she didn't tell the rest of you. I'm using her as an example because she's closest to me. But we shouldn't think of people by their diseases. And I just love that quote. Oh, there's the rest of it. See, I just didn't know I had to push the button one more time. Every person with dementia is unique, absolutely. And I think what we have learned is those memories from long time ago are the ones they really retain the most. So learning their history, letting them talk about their history. I talk about my dad a lot because he's a classic example of dementia. We take him to lunch every Saturday to Arby's. We go to Arby's every Saturday without fail. We go to the same place. We order the same food. I drive the same way. We drive by the same gas station and he tells me what the price of gas is, right? And yep, absolutely. That's more than it was last week, isn't it, Dad? Boy, that's expensive. When my son takes him to lunch and drives him back, they drive by the same cell tower that looks like a weird Christmas tree there on Highway 20. And my dad will point out the cell tower. And Darian will say, yep, isn't that weird, Dad? Or Grandpa, isn't that weird? But they need their routines and they're going to want to talk about the things they remember. And my dad used to drive everywhere and buy gas, and he was really cognizant to how many miles per gallon he was getting. He was one of those guys that would track the mileage and the price per gas and how much he was spending. So to him, driving by a gas station and noticing the price of gas is important. And so I know that I need to drive him by gas stations when I'm taking him places so he can see the price of gas and we can talk about it. Is it super exciting for me? No, not at all. But that's the world that he's in, and that's the world that I'll be in when I'm with him. And then focusing on what they can do and what they can't do, not on what they can't do. So when they can still do something, doing that with them, as opposed to, do you remember when you used to be able to do this? Or why can't you do this? You used to be able to do this. My mother was classic. My dad was like 85 years old and she wanted him to landscape the front yard. I want my yard to look like that one, she said. I'm like, Mom, first of all, physically he's not capable. And second of all, he can't track a project. You're expecting things, you're getting angry over something he's not capable of. And then knowing that challenging behaviors are almost always a signal of they're trying to communicate something that they can't communicate anymore. So when we see these challenging behaviors from people that have dementia, they're trying to tell you something. They don't have the words to tell you anymore. They're in pain. They have to go to the bathroom. Something. And to delve into what they're trying to get, what message it is they're trying to get to, is super beneficial. This is just talking about resident rights and how we treat them like real people. the list of how do you maintain dignity. And there's a slide in here that I really like. This is it right here. You know, even just the little words we use, you know, when somebody's older, 10 seconds, 10 minutes. Thought I only had 10 seconds. You know, calling something a diaper to an adult, you know, if you think about how you would feel if somebody, I do that to my husband all the time, but it's in jest, right? You know, just learning the little words that make something, you know, sound more nicer. These are just, you know, not announcing, not announcing things that are bad. Making sure people are dressed appropriately for appropriate interactions. So if you have a family member that you're with at home, you want to make sure that if the company's coming over, that they're, you know, that they look like they would have wanted to have looked before. You know, not having personal things hanging out, that kind of stuff. And then this one, this is my favorite slide as well. I got a lot of favorite slides. And what I just do is go down to the very last one in both sides. Okay, the very last one. Practice 100% forgiveness. And then on the other side, don't take it personally. And then just keep going back and forth from those two things. And if you're dealing with somebody that has dementia and you can practice 100% forgiveness and you cannot take it personally, then you're going to win. And if I had $1 for every time family members were mad at a parent that wasn't capable of making, you know, that wasn't, I don't know how to say it other than getting mad at somebody with dementia for their choices in a demented brain doesn't make any sense. And if I tell you one thing today, it's Google Teepa Snow, Teepa, snow, like the snow. She's brilliant at her continuing education on dementia. And she just explains it so well to the layperson. And she just makes you understand that this is nobody's fault. And that's the one thing I keep telling everybody, this is nobody's fault. This is nobody's fault. It's not their fault. It's not your fault. I have family members that deal with it brilliantly. You accuse me of taking all of your money and I still love you and I still visit you. And then I've had people that won't talk to their parent anymore because their parent chose to marry somebody that they thought was wrong, even though or that they accuse the child of something, which, you know, people with dementia get, you know, as they get older, they get paranoid. They think somebody took their money. And the right thing to do is just say, I'm really sorry I took your money and I won't do that again, even though you didn't take their money. And I personally have argued with the demented many times. And every time I drive home and think, why did I do that? I had a resident accuse me of taking their wine. And I argued. And I'm like, Jerry, why would I take your wine? That makes no sense. It makes no sense. Why would I take your $5 bottle of wine? Right? And the right thing for me to do would have been said, Jerry, I was really thirsty and I'm sorry I took your wine. I promise I'm not going to do it again. And let's just go forward from there. Instead of saying, Jerry, I don't even like wine. But anyways, practice 100% forgiveness. Don't take it personally. And then what I was just talking about, reality orientation, correcting somebody with dementia doesn't make any sense. It just makes you frustrated. It makes them frustrated. Get right into their world. Join it. Is there a small child right there with them? My nurse at Country Meadow Village, I call her my nurse. My nurse is brilliant at this. She had me fooled. We're talking to a resident. She's like talking about how she's taking care of her grandkids and she can't go to dinner until, and Carolyn's like, no. She's coming right now. The car's out front. The kids are going back to their mom, you know, and she takes the kids, no kids. She takes these imaginary children out to the car, puts them in the car, and the imaginary car drives off. And the resident's like, all right, let's go to dinner. But you just have to jump right into the world that they're in. And mental health is somewhat similar sometimes. You have to acknowledge that what the perception is for that person is real to them, whether it's real to you. And then when we're talking about like they're upset, like super upset, and the behaviors are getting super aggressive, is trying to delve down into what's causing that. And then accepting what you can. So the example they give here, somebody's really sad because their parents or whatever, their parents have been dead for how many years, right? Absolutely. But accepting that they think their parents are still alive, talking about their parents, saying your parents are coming later. And when they get here, I'll come get you. But until then, let's go out and work in the garden, or until then, let's go draw. Just got to make stuff up as you go. And then this is again for staff, so keep that in mind. We keep a resident history and profile on our residents. So knowing their history is so important, so you can talk about the parts of their brain that are still there, you know, where the memories still are, the old memories, not the new memories. And then finding the reason for the behavior. Here's a long list of things, and it's not all inclusive, but there could be reasons for why they're acting out. And they just can't figure out the right ways to say it. Again, my dad had strokes, and that's why he has dementia. But right after he had his strokes, his words weren't coming back right. And that's why we knew something was wrong. But he picked up his phone and he called it his talking camera. Okay. So, you know, and he says, my talking camera, and, you know, and we're looking at him in my living room like, what the hell is a talking camera? Right. But those were the two words he could come up with. You talk into a phone and it takes pictures, because all the phones these days take pictures. So that's just an example of how words go away. It was probably, it did come back. He knows what a phone is now, but that was in part of the brain that had gotten temporarily damaged. And so he had to kind of work around with two different words. And I'm like, you mean your phone? And then these are just examples for staff. So we'll just go through that. We already talked about elopement. Preventing elopement, again, this is just for staff. But this is important, again, because the reason we're having this talk is because we're all going to have a family member that has dementia that we're trying to keep safe. So just, you know, the same reminder, everything for toddlers is the same as it is for adults with dementia. We want to make sure they're safe in your home. Things like detergent and things like that, you want it out of reach if they're not keepable. I've seen detergent everywhere, you know, just because it gets poured out because they think they're putting it in the washing machine and they're not. Anyways. And then this is a little bit of self-reflection. Again, and the last thing I always tell all of our staff during our new employee orientation is, if you're doing something that you think is for the benefit of the resident, then it's probably the right decision. And you to do it, and then, you know, if it was wrong, you're not going to get fired for it. Because you don't want people worried that they're going to end up doing something that's not right. If it passes the test, kind of like our 408 test, but if it passes the test for, is it for the benefit of somebody, then it's the right thing to do. And if it, for some reason, per a regulation, it was actually the wrong thing to do, then we can discuss it and figure out better ways next time. But I don't want people hesitating. I want people to defer to what they think is right for somebody. So that's kind of all I have. If anybody has any questions about dementia, I'd love to answer to my ability. You do. Yeah.
It's there. Then the question is, do you share these slides with the family? There's not a lot of stuff there.
We don't, but so I'm not going to be honest. I agreed to do a program on Tuesday at 8 a.m. and I emailed my boss and said, hey, do you happen to have a PowerPoint that I could share? Because I'm not good at throwing this stuff together. And by 9:45, he'd thrown this together for me. And then he said, and I told him what I was doing. And he said, if you guys gleaned anything from this and you thought it was valuable, to let him know, because he would incorporate it more, not just into staff, but into that kind of stuff. So. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely. I have the conversations frequently enough. I think it's super valuable information for everybody. Does anybody else have any questions? Does anybody want to brag about how many animals they got? So another funny story, because I'm full of them. My husband's dad moved into Country Meadow Village. We moved him up from Florida, and he knew he was going to have an assessment, and Charlie drove him up. So the whole way up, they practiced the animal test. Like, he's like, I don't want to fail. So he's like going through all the animals, driving from Florida up to Washington. So he was independent, didn't need any help. But that's all I got. So, all right.
I do actually have one question. You know, you talk about kind of diverting the conversation to different direction, like, you know, the gal who had the grandkids and so on and so forth. You know, at what point do they come back 10 minutes later and say, but you said, or does that kind of, do they eventually kind of forget the white lie that's told after, or does it depend on how far along they've progressed, or you just kind of grow to know that person and how far you can take
It's
it?
different for everybody, but when you jump into that little scenario that they're in and you continue it, it continues for them too. So they saw the kid get in the car and they saw the kid get driven off, even though that didn't happen. And to me, witnessing this and seeing my nurse just do it on the fly, and I'm like, what is happening, you know? And just seeing this resident who was super anxious. I can't do this. I've got to watch these kids. You know, I've been tasked with babysitting, and just see it completely calm down. I'm just saying it's real and it works. So I think, but it does vary. You know, they might come back later and say, hey.
Well, I'm more like, you know, when you tell somebody that their husband who's passed he's still coming to visit, and
Yeah.
you know, tomorrow or
Yeah.
in an hour.
And then sometimes just passing that on for another hour. He called and he said he'd be here in an hour. And then by that next hour, they've moved on and done something else. But yeah, telling him over and over again that that person has passed away is just re-traumatizing. And there's no reason for it. And we've just figured out it's just better to jump right in their world. Wasn't he a delightful man? I can't wait for him to come and visit. Yeah. People want to hear good things about that. So, all right. Thank you so much. Do I get a pen? See, I've been waiting 10 years to get a pen.
You can write down everything
That I'm going to forget.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Cool beans.
All right. Thank you, Sandra. That was a great program. And Mike, I agree. Having her talk about the bell curve reminds me of the cognitive development of kiddos. And so I guess we just know what a lot of our students are going to be like when they're 85. I realized I didn't ask if there were any other announcements. I saw Brock and I was reminded that the golf tournament is on September 7th. So if you haven't signed up yet, make sure that you get a hold of Brock or Nick. And then the barbecue is the 14th. And Becky and I are going to be putting together a work party for September 30th for the Helping Hands Food Bank. She's looking for about 10 Rotarians to help with the event. We said 10, right? Okay, from about 9 to noon. So if you're interested, get a hold of Becky or I so that we can get that service project going. It's for the, Becky, it's for the leadership. Sandra, I'm sorry, we're not going to invite you because you cursed too much today. All right. So keep that on your radar. It's a Saturday morning. And finally, if there are no other comments, did anybody else have anything to add? It's the joke, which is your favorite part. So a teacher asks her class, if I gave you 2 cats and another 2 cats and another 2, how many would you have? And little Johnny answers, 7. The teacher says, no, listen carefully. If I gave you 2 cats, another 2 cats, and another 2, how many would you have? And again, little Johnny says 7. The teacher, who is trying not to get frazzled, says, let me put it to you differently. If I gave you 2 apples, another 2 apples, and another 2 apples, how many would you have? Johnny says 6. The teacher says, okay, great. So if I gave you 2 cats, and another 2 cats, how many would you have? Now Johnny's getting a little irritated and he says 7. And the teacher asks, Johnny, where in the heck do you keep getting 7 from? And Johnny says, because I've already got a freaking cat.